I love sharing my guests' stories with you. Behind the scenes, I pay my hosting fees and software costs and invest time in planning, recording, and editing episodes to make sure the guests sound great and listeners hear the best content. If you'd like to help me out with some financial support for Creativity Found, you can make a one-off payment or start a subscription from as little as £1 or $1 or as much as you'd like by visiting buymeacoffee.com/creativityfound. There is, of course, a link in the show notes.
Ultimately, I didn't choose a school that had a film department, a film program, because I thought, well, it'd be a really fun way to spend college, but I'm not going to work in movies. I was a very practical 11th grader, apparently. I fell in love with it. I was not good at it at all. When I first got a camera in my hand, I had no idea where to point it. My frames were off. My story was inconsistent, but I got better. I don't need to get up at 5 anymore. I get up about like 6:30, have breakfast with my wife, and then I write for about an hour to 90 minutes, and then close my laptop, open my work laptop, and I'm at work now. Be critical of yourself. Look at something and go, why isn't this working? And then figure it out from there.
Hi, I'm Claire. For this podcast, I chat with people who have found or refound their creativity as adults. We'll explore their childhood experiences of the arts, discuss how they came to the artistic practices they now love, and consider the barriers they may have experienced between the two. We'll also explore what it is that people value and gain from their newfound artistic pursuits, and how their creative lives enrich their practical, necessary, everyday lives. This time, I'm chatting with Tyler Schwanke. Hi, Tyler. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Claire?
I'm very well, thank you. Start by telling me, please, about your current creative pursuits.
Absolutely. So right now, I am a novelist. I had my first novel come out 2023. It's called Breaking In. It is what I call a coming-of-age comic caper about a young film student who is pursuing her dream goal. She's from Fargo, North Dakota, which, if you've never been there, right now it's February, so it's completely ice. It's like Planet Hoth from Star Wars. It's just freezing. And so she goes to New York to go to this film camp. She's 17. She's going into her senior year of high school. She's got this script that she has spent a couple of years writing. It's an homage to her dad, who was killed in a bank heist. And so she goes there to be part of this competition that the camp has, and to also work with kind of her idol, this director, Ricky O'Near. And at the end of the film camp, the camp is actually closed down. The academy's closed down. We find out that Ricky has been laundering money from the students from his school. And so they shut down the school. Millie's sent home brokenhearted. 6-7 months later, she's back in Fargo. She's in the movie theater, and she is, watching the coming attractions and sees that a trailer for the next Ricky O'Near movie, and it's her script. He's stolen it, and because of the way that the camp's set up, she basically has no rights anymore. She's given him the script. So she takes her small but mighty film crew, turns her film crew into a heist crew, and they make a plan to steal the movie 3 days before the premiere. I get a lot of emails from folks like in kind of like rural parts of the Midwest that have read this and, said, I really feel seen. Like, this is me. This is what I've been trying to do. And that's really cool because this is me. Like, I'm Millie in some ways. I'm a Midwest boy, apple pie here. No, but I don't have any Hollywood connections or anything like that. So it's kind of my attempt as well, as kind of to get my foot in the door with novels, but also just my love of movies.
Yeah.
It's sold as a young adult novel, and it certainly is in some respects, but it's more of a crossover book for me. I get more emails, from adults than I do teenagers. I think just, everybody kind of relates to it because there's things that you can find yourself in it. So that's been really cool for me. But now I'm making the transition, trying to become like an adult novelist, which always sounds weird when you say adult novelist. It sounds like you're like writing like erotic thrillers, and I'm not. But, just more for like an adult audience. got two projects right now that I'm kind of getting out into the world. And I think I'm going to take a step back from the novel for a little bit. And I think I'm going to try writing a script. I haven't written a script in like a decade, and it sounds really fun to do. So I think kind of just while the novel stuff is figuring itself out, I'm gonna try to write a movie or two and see how that goes.
Brilliant. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That sounds super exciting. I think I was going to mention the autobiographical element of the novel, but hopefully it didn't go quite that far in your own experience.
I did. I don't have the guts to do that. So part of the book, and this isn't really giving anything away, but Millie's in to taking her heist knowledge. Like she needs something more than that, right? That's not going to be enough. And she knows someone that works for a security company. And that came from my first job out of college. Graduated film school, sent my thesis films all over the country, got into, some festivals and was trying to find production work. But, I was living at home back in my high school bedroom and was kind of like, I need money, So I got a day job, which actually was more of a night job. It was a second shift, 4 to midnight, working for a security company. So that's kind of where the idea came from of like, originally this book was just like kind of a down on his luck filmmaker, really trying to make a break for it, and thought, I have this job, I have access to codes, maybe I could pull off a heist on my own and use that money to make my own film. So the original kind of concept, and I never got further than just kind of writing this down. When I was working for the security company, I jot down notes on a piece of paper and kind of collect that. But the idea was like, oh, maybe I could like rob a Costco and then use that money. And then I was like, what? How would you rob a Costco? Like you break into a Costco, what do you do after that? Like where, like Costco's don't have safes, I don't think. Like they probably, deposit their money at the end of the night. So it was just, that was kind of like this kind of comical idea of like they plan all this and then they really have no idea what they're doing. And then it's really just kind of an escape at that point. Like, can they get out of the Costco before the cops get them? So number one, I was never going to try that, but I thought it was fun as far as kind of a story. And then it kind of just grew from there where I thought that's not very sympathetic. You're not really going to rally around a down on his luck filmmaker that thinks stealing is the answer, right? So that's kind of where the idea of the script being stolen kind of came into play.
She can still be the good guy because the other person is the bad guy. And
right.
Yeah, you can be on her side.
That's kind of the golden rule, right? Like your protagonist doesn't have to be perfect, can have defaults, but somebody else has got to be worse, right?
Yeah. Before we get on to actually going to film school, when you were much younger, did you have positive creative experiences as a child at home or at school?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents read to me at a very early age. I loved reading. I would read my Goosebump books and then kind of run out of, I'd go through them all in 2 days. So I would start reading my parents' books, whatever they had, so I'd read like Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park and The Client by John Grisham when I was like in second grade. And then I started coming up with just kind of my own stories. And my mom was the like classroom mom, right? Like she would come in, the helper, and she would come in and like help with projects and that kind of stuff. And one of the projects, we did this really cool thing where we got to write these stories, and then my mom would go and type up everybody's like 10-page story, and then kind of laminate it. So it was this kind of, it was like a hardcover front and back with like the pages inside, and then it was like, I don't know, glued inside or something like that. And then, we would get it back and then we would draw on it. We would like draw the covers and we draw pictures in it. So I made up my own version of Goosebumps because I was huge into those. That's how my mom and dad got me to behave, was if I'm good, the next month I get the next Goosebumps book because they came out every month.
Yeah.
So I wrote my own Goosebumps books, and it was called Chills. And it was only one book, and I read it a couple of years ago. I found it when I was going through old stuff, and it's terrible. And there's and also like Goosebumps is about like mysteries and like kind of supernatural stuff. And this is about a teacher that, I don't know, there was a lot of gun violence in it. And I was like, this is a lot for a first grader. Like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, and I got to write a couple of things like that. It kind of came and went. I didn't totally grow up writing stories, but I always wanted to write in some capacity. I remember when I saw Harriet the Spy, I probably was like in sixth grade, maybe. For like 2 weeks, I had spied on all my neighbors and I jotted everything down in a notebook. But then I gave it up because it was super boring. Like I'd be rolling around the neighborhood and like sitting behind, air conditioners, watching people like mow their lawn or sip lemonade. And it was like, this isn't really that exciting. I don't think I'm going to be a spy. It was like the jotting down, right? The fun stuff. And then just even like in junior high, I took a notebook and was writing a movie script, or what I, thought a movie script should look like. I didn't know about like slug lines and action and all that kind of stuff, but it was called Premiere, and it took place at a Hollywood premiere, which is fitting because the third act of Breaking In takes place at a Hollywood premiere. But it was like the characters didn't actually have character names. They were Will Smith, Jennifer Love Hewitt, I think like DiCaprio, and then me. I was in there, and yeah, Jennifer Love Hewitt was definitely my love interest. So, this is just an eighth grader hoping, dreams come to fruition. So, but yeah, and, just definitely, again, story, whether or not it's in a film or TV or the novel form, something that I've just always loved, always had a passion for, and, kind of tried stuff on my own here and there as I grew up.
Yeah. So then tell me about higher education. Are you thinking of starting your own podcast and looking for a little advice from someone who started from scratch and hasn't looked back? That's me, by the way. Then book a podcast startup sanity check with me so we can work together to clarify and simplify the process of starting a show. I have been podcasting with Creativity Found for 4 years. I have won and been shortlisted for prestigious podcast awards, been a guest on other people's shows, and attended many podcast-specific events in the UK and US, where I have made lots of podcasty pals across all genres. For my second show, Podcasting 2.0 in Practice, I have had the privilege of talking to industry experts as together we teach creators how to benefit from and implement the latest Podcasting 2.0 technologies. In this paid 4 hours chat, we can talk through your content idea, how to record, which platforms are worth the money, how to get your show to all the listening apps, what you need to know to future-proof your show, and much more. Please note, I will not tell you how to have a chart-topping show in your first week, nor how to pitch to sponsors. I will, however, act as a mentor whom you can run your ideas and questions past. The decisions you make with the knowledge you gain are all your own. Visit creativityfound.co.uk/podcasting to find out more. And there is, of course, a link in the show notes.
When I went to college, I toured a lot of places that had film departments. And I remember thinking, like, ultimately, I didn't choose a school that had a film department, a film program, because I thought, well, it'd be a really fun way to spend college, but I'm not going to work in movies. I was a very practical 11th grader, apparently. So I picked a school that had a good journalism program. I thought it'd be cool to be like a music critic, right? So, the dream job at the time was like to write for Rolling Stone. I did one semester, like I didn't pick a major. I just did like a couple classes. And then I decided that, well, you have to like write for like small papers for not a lot of money, and you have no work-life balance, and there's no guarantee. And there was just so much stuff that said, I don't know about that. So I just kind of like, went to school for a couple of years, just kind of figuring stuff out. And then filmmaking was not at the school I was at, but was at the school across the river, Minnesota State University. At the time when I went there, it was straight film, and we actually like shot like on like Super 8, and we would cut and splice and all this stuff that now I don't think they do anymore, right? Because there's very few labs that can process the film. But I just thought, I thought, well, I'll get my journals done, and I picked some classes that kind of filled in some of the liberal arts requirements, right? And just thought, well, this would be interesting. I can just kind of learn more about something that I've always loved. And I fell in love with it. I was not good at it at all. When I first got a camera in my hand, I had no idea where to point it. My frames were off. My story was inconsistent, but I got better, right? And I actually I took a year off. Me and one of my best friends from high school, we went to New York for a year. So I went from Fargo, North Dakota to New York, which was quite a culture shock, right? So I went to this 1 year film program and really just learned so much in such a short amount of time about all the technical aspects of it. But I definitely fell in love more with like learning about script writing and story beats and that kind of stuff. So when that finished up, I went back to Moorhead to finish my degree. I thought that was important, but also took a English creative writing emphasis as well. So I was a double major, film production and English creative writing. So I learned so much about story through the English creative writing program, that helped me when it came to script writing and also storytelling and just saying, like, where do I need to put the camera to convey the story to the audience? And that's really where I learned storytelling and really influenced my novel writing. So I think everybody kind of comes at their writing a book from different avenues. For me, I like to outline and I overwrite by quite a lot because I want every idea to be on the page for that first draft. And then that way I can read the whole thing and really see what the story is about, right? And then edits and cuts and stuff from there. It's the same thing you do in film production, right? You shoot as much stuff as possible. You watch the footage and then you say, where's my story? What's working? What's not working? And then put it together from there. So that's really where all of this that came from. And then when I graduated again, like I mentioned earlier, I went to the job working for the security company, and that was through a staffing company. So gradually I ended up working for the staffing company as a recruiter. I did that for like a year, and then I transitioned over to recruitment for a healthcare company. I've been doing that in one form or another for over a decade now. But the healthcare company that I worked for had tuition assistance. They would pay $2,500 a year. And that was enough for me to take one class at Hamlin for my MFA. And I didn't really care too much about like completing the MFA. It was just more of I'd started writing a novel before any kind of classes and like that. Just sat down and said, I'm going to write a novel. And when it was done, it was okay, but I could tell there's a lot of things that I just needed help on. And I wanted feedback, right, from people that it's not my mom or my wife, somebody that's going to be like, dude, this part sucks. This is slowing you down. So I wanted to have that kind of workshop feel. So I went for my MFA, and then it took me about 10 years, and I sold Breaking In before I completed my MFA, and it wasn't something that I was working on for school. So I would take like one class one semester, and then the next semester I would work on my own writing. And it was a really good balance and helped me really kind of advance my novel writing and take kind of what I knew from filmmaking and transition into the novel. I was really lucky that this company that, was willing to pay for that. And then COVID hit and I split from there. So I just like took the degree and left.
Going back then, before COVID and talking about balance, as you've mentioned, how are you balancing and fitting it in? Because you've mentioned, obviously, the full-time job, the classes, the actual writing, your wife. How is this all fitting together for you in your everyday life?
Absolutely. So my wife is incredibly supportive. She knows how important this is to me, how much I've always wanted to pursue this, and especially at the beginning where I didn't know what that would look like. I had heard that it's good to have a routine. It's good to kind of fall into a pattern. So I thought, okay. And at first it was just weekends I would write. I'd be like, Saturday, I'm not doing anything else. And I would write for like 10 hours. And it was fun. But after a while, that kind of takes its toll, right? And your body's all stiff from sitting at a desk all day. And then kind of balancing with school and everything. I figured out a way to take those 10 hours, break it up over the course of a week. So I'm not doing all of this. And also the story is staying fresh. Because that's a big thing too, right? Is you write Saturday, maybe a little bit Sunday. I would read the stuff over the week because I wanted to at least be productive. I wanted to be doing something. But I was editing as I was going over the week just so I could do something. And I don't do that anymore because I think it's important to just let the first draft be the first draft and then read the whole thing and find out where your story is, right? So I was editing stuff and then I'd be like, oh, I need to go back and fix this because I made this change. And it's like, that's all second draft stuff. Don't worry about going back because you'll never get the first draft done if you do that. So just write it as it is. So I started getting up like 5 a.m. and I would write for about 90 minutes before going to work. So an hour to 90 minutes and then, go shower and get dressed and go into work. Eventually I was able to like I work from home now, so I don't need to worry I don't need to get up at 5 anymore. I get up about like 6:30, have breakfast with my wife, and then I write for about an hour to 90 minutes, and then close my laptop, open my work laptop, and I'm at work now. So it's been really great. And then that way, again, the story's fresh. I'm writing every day. I'm being consistent, and I'm getting words on the page. Really, you just have to prioritize. I have met so many great writers that are way stronger than I feel I am, that have some really good short stories and parts of a novel, but I think it's hard for them to find the rhythm, right? And they also have full-time jobs, and it really has to be like your second job, and you can't call in sick, right? Because if you do, the only thing that's going to happen is you're not going to finish your book. You're not going to finish your short story or whatever it is that you're working on. So I've just always treated it like that as my second job. Again, I can't sell anything if I don't finish it. So that's always been kind of the driving force for me is making time, prioritizing. Sometimes you just say, I can't do that this weekend because I have this going on, or I can't do it until this time because in the mornings I'm writing, and that's consistent. And unless I'm like out of the country, like on a vacation or something like that, I'm writing every day.
Wow. And talking of selling, how was that working out in your head as you were writing? So was it like, I've sold the plot, so I've got to write it? Or was it, I'm writing it, when I'm finished it and I'm happy with it, I'll try and sell it? Or was it going to be a self-publishing? What was your thought process?
Yeah, I've never been really interested in self-publishing. Not that I'm against it by any means. I'm not. It just wasn't something that I think motivated me. And what I mean by that is again, this is just me, right? Deciding that I want to write a book and I want it to be in bookstores. I didn't even think about an audiobook, and it's an audiobook now, and it's so cool because it's like a radio play. It was a component that I never considered. It has been one of the really, great surprises about this. But for me, it was, I want to find an agent because I know that helps get it published, right? If I knew a trick where I didn't need an agent and I could go right to the publisher, I would have done that, but I didn't. So I thought, okay, this is going to be the first step. So no, I never thought about anything other than finish a completed book, have friends, family read it, give feedback, workshop it until it's just exactly what I want, and then go out and do the querying. And I should say that, Breaking In was my third novel I finished. I wrote 2 other books prior to that. So one before I started my MFA program, and then one kind of towards the beginning. I queried, and I probably sent over to 100 agents for each one and got some read-throughs, but I never, got an offer. And I can tell a lot of why, because, certain things about my characters, the arcs, the plot, too much at some time, oversharing details, getting bogged down, not enough maybe when it counts. So it was a learning tool for me. And, so some people say, like, have you ever tried to go get those published, those other novels published? And absolutely not. I don't want them. I don't want them out there and people be like, this is the kind of writer he is, because I've grown so much from that. But I'm grateful that I wrote those. Like, that's important to me. That was just as important as my MFA program. You learn so much by doing. You learn what doesn't work pretty quickly, right? You can see it, you can read it, and it kind of stands out. So, make sure to be open, be critical of yourself. Look at something and go, why isn't this working? And then figure it out from there. So once I got Breaking into a point where I felt, okay, great, I'm going to try to get an agent. I had a friend of mine, he's another writer, Robert Kerbeck. He writes mainly nonfiction. He's written a lot about actually the wildfires that are happening right now in LA. He had a book come out called Malibu Burning a couple of years ago, which is about the fires in Malibu. He told me about this company that's now out of business, unfortunately, called Writer's Relief. And basically, you would fill out a form and say, this is what my book's about. This is where it takes place. This is the genre, all that kind of stuff. And then they sent you a list of like 30 agents that would be interested in your type of book. So I used that. And I think within the first 15 queries, I got an offer.
Wow.
Yeah, the other 2 books, a year each, maybe more for the second one. I think I spent a lot of time, right? Over 100 agents, a lot of reads, nothing. This one within 2 weeks, I haven't, so I was like, wow, okay, cool. And I think, again, that's just because I learned so much. I learned what didn't work and put it into what does. So I signed with my agent, and then we started sending out a little bit, and then COVID hit. He told me, look, everything's kind of just shut down at this point and people aren't reading. I'm not hearing things. So we're just going to kind of pause and wait. So we really did kind of wait for about a year before he started sending it back out again. And then we met up with Blackstone Publishing. They loved the book. And then we signed with them. And then I learned how long publishing takes. So I got an offer. Oh my gosh. I think it was like November 2021. And then May of 2023. So that's like 18 months later, right? The book came out. But it was, it was really educational from just the publishing, aspect of working with an editor for the first time. I had never worked with an editor outside of a couple literary magazines and journals that maybe they said, they would send over a revised vision of my story and say, these are some suggestions, but if you don't like them, whatever. And I'd be like, okay. And this is like, no, I think you need to do this and this is why. And we need you to write this, so we actually beefed up the book a little bit. It was 84,000 when we sold it, and it was published at 93,000. And that was really educational for me, and stuff that I had took into my writing and have applied it to the projects I'm working on now. I got to learn about cover design. I actually got cover approval, which I hear never happens, so that was really cool. Yeah, and then just having it out there, doing some book signings, talking on podcasts. It's been a lot of fun.
How long would you estimate? How long was the whole kind of writing process, including the 2 novels that you don't want people to see? How long were you honing your craft, do you think, to get to this point?
Yeah, I've been writing fiction in the novel form since 2011. Yeah, so 14 years.
Yeah.
So, and it took me 8 years, 3 books to get an agent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And from an overall well-being lifestyle point of view, I mean, you've told us about the logistics of your lifestyle and when you write and when you work and when you speak with your wife, but does having this writing practice, do you think it complements other aspects of your life?
I think so, because it scratches an itch that I have, right? So in my day job, it's not super creative, right? I'm a recruiter. I go out and find people to work for a healthcare company, but I think it's all about work-life balance. And so me starting off my day doing what I absolutely love and then getting the opportunity to still have a full-time job, I do love that aspect as well. But it's okay when I'm having my day job, it's not me going, oh, I wish I was doing this. I wish I was doing that. It's like, you already did that today. You got to do that aspect. It also helps just kind of like thinking outside of the box, when it comes to kind of different things in a different perspective. A lot of my coworkers and people that I work with come from a business administration background, or they come from a human resources background, and I'm like, well, I did film production. And if you want to talk Beowulf, I can eke it out. I can tell you what my teacher wanted me to take from it. But so I think, it's really just kind of, it's opened up other avenues where, I never really thought I'd be like on podcasts for this. And I've loved that part of it. I've done about 16 of them, and I didn't realize how much I love talking about the creative process. And when I get emails, this last one I got was from a gentleman that said his son is an actor looking to go into film school, I think this coming fall. And he had heard me on a podcast, and that's how he found the book. And so I just thought that was super cool, and nothing I never really put into play, right? Never really gave serious thought about. So it's been fun, kind of different aspects of that. And then I got to be on a morning show. It was a local morning show for North Dakota Today, shot in Fargo. So that was fun. I was on TV and I didn't totally embarrass myself. So, big win there. I've never watched it. That's the thing I've also learned. I've never listened to any of my podcasts, and I've never watched myself on TV.
Really?
So yeah, I have no interest. I hope it goes well. I hope this feels good, but I'm not going to go back and cause I think I would just nitpick, and I think it would be easy to get over involved in that aspect of it, worrying too much. I think the biggest thing for me is I hope people realize that I'm just trying to be authentic. I'm telling you how much work it is, not so you're like, oh, okay, we get it, dude. You did it. No, I'm saying you could do it too. It just takes a really long time, and not for everybody. Some people know somebody, or they're just like the world's greatest writer and takes one draft. Awesome. Cool. That didn't work for me. That never happened for me. and this is what I've done. And so it's fun to kind of share that with other people and in different aspects. I like right now for me, I draw a lot of inspiration from writers, but also like actors, musicians, people that really kind of struggle and take a lot of time. Like Chapel Rowan, right? Like a couple of years ago, she was doing Pink Pony Club at like barbecues,
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
community events. And now she's on the Grammys,
Yeah.
like, dude, cool. Good on you.
Yeah.
Well, how did that work for her? She didn't stop. She continued. She worked on it. She perfected it. And I think that's really, really important to know that if this isn't going to be your full-time job at the beginning, you still have to treat it like a second full-time job and really commit yourself.
It's something that this podcast, we talk a lot about, and a lot of my guests, have a job and then do their other creative thing that they want to be doing alongside that. And again, we have talked a lot about the amount of time. We're being realistic here. You don't just do a thing and then all of a sudden it's a wonderful thing that everybody knows about. And it's really useful for everyone that's listening to know, oh, that person has gone through what I'm going through now. I'm not the only one that is slogging through this. So that's the reality and the authenticity is very, very important. And if you were to listen back to this podcast, I'm sure you wouldn't be nitpicking any of it.
We'll see. I don't know about that, but yeah.
But I don't mind if you don't listen.
I'd be nitpicking about me.
Yeah, I know.
Just me. Yeah.
No, I'll edit beautifully. You'd be perfect. How can people connect with you, Tyler?
Yeah, so I have a website that has links to all my social. Really, probably Instagram and my Facebook page is going to be the bigger ones. So that's where, when this comes out, I will put it on my socials. I encourage people to come find me. And then my website also has links to where you can order the book and then also just learn about, different opportunities and stuff that I have coming out.
And what was the website called?
Just tylerschwanke.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Tyler. It's been really lovely to speak with you.
You too, Claire. I appreciate the time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, perhaps you'd like to financially contribute to future episodes at buymeacoffee.com/creativityfound. There's a link in the show notes. If you are listening on a value for value enabled app, such as Fountain, True Fans, or Podcast Guru, feel free to send a few sats my way. And if you have no idea of what I'm talking about, you can find out more by listening to my sister podcast called Podcasting 2.0 in Practice.